Lucien Vieri did not believe in accidents. He sat in the shadows of Il Vespro, his club, his fortress, his eyes scanning the crowd with the patience of a man who had built an empire on knowing when to strike and when to wait. The crystal chandeliers cast expensive light over expensive people, all of them performing their roles in a city that belonged to him in ways they would never understand. Then he saw her. She was not performing. She stood at the marble bar surrounded by university colleagues, a graduate student lost among them, and she laughed at something one of them said. The sound reached him across the room, genuine and unguarded, and Lucien found himself still watching long after he should have looked away. There was nothing remarkable about her appearance, dark hair pulled back, simple dress, no jewelry demanding attention, but she held his gaze in a way the glittering women of his world never could. She was real. He had forgotten real existed. His attention sharpened when the two men approached the bar. He knew them. Small players, hungry for status, the kind who would do anything to catch the notice of families like his. They ordered drinks. One of them palmed something from his pocket, small and white, and dropped it into her glass while her friends argued over something on a phone. Lucien watched the pill dissolve. He watched her drink. He watched her smile fade, confusion replacing it, her hand pressing to her forehead as the world began to tilt. Her friends noticed. Concerned chatter. Someone mentioned a cab. Someone else mentioned getting her home. They meant well, but they did not understand what was about to happen. The two men were already moving closer, casual, patient, waiting for their moment to offer assistance that would lead somewhere else entirely. Lucien rose. He crossed the floor without hurry, without hesitation, a man accustomed to paths clearing before him. The bouncers straightened. The bartender found something urgent to attend to. Even the air seemed to part for him as he reached the small group of academics, their chatter dying instantly at the sight of him. "I'm a friend," he said. It was not a lie. It was not the truth. It was simply enough. Frankie looked up at him, her eyes struggling to focus, and in that moment she saw something in his face that made her reach for him instead of away. He caught her before she fell. Lifted her like she weighed nothing. Turned to her friends with an expression that invited no questions. "I'll see her home safely." They believed him. People always did. As he carried her through the club, past the two men frozen in confusion and dawning horror, he glanced at his head of security waiting by the door. No words were needed. Enzo nodded once and turned back toward the bar, toward the small players who had made the mistake of trying to play in his city. Lucien carried Francesca De Luca into the night, her head resting against his chest, her breathing slow and heavy with whatever poison they had poured into her glass. She did not know his name. She did not know where she was going. She did not know that the arms holding her so carefully belonged to a man capable of terrible things. She would learn. But first, she would be safe. His car waited. His driver opened the door. Lucien settled her into the leather seat as gently as if she were made of glass, then climbed in beside her. Not his club. Not a hospital. His villa. His territory. His. Francesca woke to silk sheets and the memory of nothing. The ceiling above her was vaulted, painted with scenes of old gods and older sins, and for a long moment she simply stared at it, willing her brain to catch up with her body. Her head ached. Her mouth was dry. The last thing she remembered was the club, the bar, her colleagues laughing about something she could no longer recall. She sat up too fast. The room spun, steadied, resolved itself into something that made no sense. This was not a hospital. This was not her apartment. This was the kind of bedroom that existed in magazines, all antique furniture and fresh flowers and windows that looked out onto gardens no city apartment could afford. The door opened before she could move. He filled the frame. Tall, dark, dressed in charcoal gray that probably cost more than her tuition. His face revealed nothing, gave nothing, took everything, her breath, her voice, her ability to think. "You're awake," he said. Not a question. "Where am I?" Her voice came out rough, unfamiliar. "My home." He stepped inside but did not approach, maintaining a distance that felt less like courtesy and more like control. "You were drugged last night. At the club. Do you remember?" She searched the fog of her memory and found only fragments. The bar. The drink. The slow slide of reality tilting sideways. "No," she whispered. "The men who did it are no longer a concern." He said it simply, the way someone might discuss the weather, and something cold moved down her spine. "You'll stay here for a few days. Until I'm certain you're safe. Stay. Here. With him. I need to call my friends. They've been informed you're with family. I don't have. You do now." She stared at him. He stared back. There was no cruelty in his expression, but there was no negotiation either. He was not asking. He was telling. She had spent her life around men who thought they could tell her things, but none of them had ever looked at her like this, like her resistance was simply weather, something to be noted and then ignored. "My phone will be returned when you leave." She opened her mouth to argue, to demand, to do something, but the words died as he moved closer. Not threatening. Just present. Just there, filling the space between them with something she could not name. "Eat," he said. "Rest. The house is secure. You have nothing to fear here." Nothing to fear. From the man who kept her prisoner in silk sheets and fresh flowers. He left. The door closed. The lock did not click, but she knew without checking that it might as well have. Days passed. She could not track them properly. The light through the windows shifted, meals appeared, the gardens outside remained perfect and unreachable. A man named Enzo brought her books from a library she had not known existed, spoke to her in the gentle tones of a grandfather, answered her questions with the precision of someone who had been trained to reveal nothing. "He saved you," Enzo said once, when she asked why she could not leave. "From what?" "From men who would have done far worse than keep you in a beautiful room." She wanted to argue. She wanted to demand her freedom. But she had seen the news once, on a television someone forgot to turn off, a story about two men found in the river, faces unrecognizable, connected to nothing and no one. The men who did it are no longer a concern. She stopped asking to leave. Instead she watched. She learned the rhythms of the house, the silences between the guards, the way the staff moved around him like planets around a sun. She learned that he spent hours in his library, that he read philosophy and history and poetry, that his hands could hold a book with the same care they had used to lift her from that bar. She learned that he watched her too. From doorways. From windows. From across the dining table when Enzo insisted they eat together. His eyes followed her the way they had followed everything that first night, patient, calculating, seeing things she did not know she revealed. "You're not what I expected," she said one evening, the words escaping before she could catch them. He set down his wine. "What did you expect?" "Someone smaller." Something shifted in his face. Not a smile, she had not seen him smile, but something close. Something human. "No one has ever called me that before." She should have been afraid. She was in his house, at his table, eating his food, wearing clothes that appeared in her closet each morning like magic. She should have been terrified. Instead she found herself wanting to know what that almost smile would look like if it ever became real. The night she stopped being afraid, she started being something else. She did not have a name for it yet. But she felt it, there in the silence between them, waiting to be spoken. The library became theirs. Francesca found herself there each evening, drawn by the fire and the books and the impossible reality of a man who ruled a kingdom of violence yet read Neruda by candlelight. He did not speak when she entered. He simply nodded, returned to his pages, and let her presence settle into the room like something that belonged. She chose a volume of art history from his shelves, ran her fingers over the spine, wondered how many others had touched it. The collection was extraordinary, first editions, museum catalogs, texts she had only ever seen in university archives. She asked him about it once. He told her his mother had been a painter. He did not say more. She did not ask. The nights grew longer. The silences grew softer. On the 7th evening, she looked up from her book and found him watching her. Not the quick glances she had grown accustomed to, not the careful assessment of a man who trusted no one. This was different. This was naked in a way she did not think him capable of. "What?" she asked. "You hum when you read," he said. "Did you know that?" She did not. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, looked back at her book, tried to find the place she had been. Her heart beat too fast. Her hands trembled slightly. She told herself it was the wine. He rose. Crossed the room. Sat beside her on the leather couch, close enough that she could smell cedar and something darker, something that belonged only to him. "Francesca." She looked up. He kissed her. It was not what she expected from a man who controlled things with iron and fear. It was gentle. Questioning. His hand rose to her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone, and for a moment he was not the boss of anything, just a man, kissing a woman, waiting to see if she would stay or run. She stayed. The kiss deepened. Her book fell forgotten to the floor. His hand slid into her hair, and she felt the restraint in him, the careful holding back of something massive and dangerous. He kissed her like she was the first real thing he had found in years. He kissed her like he was afraid. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. His breathing was uneven. So was hers. "I should not have done that," he said. "Why?" He pulled back, looked at her, and for the first time she saw uncertainty in those dark eyes. "Because now I will want to do it again." He left before she could answer. The fire crackled. Her book lay on the floor. She touched her lips, felt the ghost of him there, and understood that everything had changed. The next morning, Alessia arrived. She appeared at breakfast, sweeping into the dining room in designer silk, kissing Lucian on both cheeks like an old friend. She was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful, polished, cold, meant to be admired from a distance. "You must be the guest," Alessia said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Lucian never keeps guests. You must be special." Francesca felt the weight of that assessment, the calculation behind it. She said nothing. Alessia was there for business, or so she claimed. She sat through meetings, wandered the gardens, made small talk that felt like interrogation. In the afternoon, she found Francesca alone on the terrace. "May I?" She gestured to the empty chair. Francesca nodded. There was no polite way to refuse. "You look at him like he's a man," Alessia said, lighting a cigarette. "He's not. He's a position. A title. A weapon." She blew smoke toward the garden. "I know. I married one." "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Alessia studied her with something almost like pity. "You think you've seen him. The books, the silence, the way he touched your face. That's real. But so is the other part. The part that puts men in rivers. You cannot have one without the other." "Ask me how I know." Francesca said nothing. "He will consume you," Alessia said. "Not because he means to. Because he cannot help it. Men like him take up all the space. They do not mean to leave none for you. They simply do not notice there is none left." She stubbed out her cigarette and rose. "He is capable of love," she said. "That is the worst part. He will love you completely, and it will still not be enough to protect you from what he is." She left Francesca alone with the smoke and the silence and the seed of doubt she had planted. That night, Lucian did not come to the library. Francesca waited. The fire burned low. Her book remained unopened in her lap. She told herself it was better this way, that Alessia was right, that she could not have one without the other, and she did not know if she could survive the other. But when she finally went to her room, she found a single white rose on her pillow. No note. No explanation. Just the flower, perfect and impossible, there in the dark. She slept with it beside her. And in the morning, she knew she had to leave. Not because she wanted to. Because staying meant choosing, and choosing meant accepting everything, the books and the blood, the poetry and the prisoners in rivers. She went to find him. To tell him. To ask him to let her go. She did not make it far. The commotion started near the gate. Shouting. The screech of tires. Enzo's voice, raised in a way she had never heard, barking orders that made no sense. Then the door to her room burst open. Not Lucian. Men she did not know. Rough hands. A cloth over her face, sweet and chemical, and the world dissolving into fragments as she was dragged from the only safety she had ever known. Francesca woke to concrete and rust and the smell of the river. Her wrists were bound. Her head pounded. The last thing she remembered was the villa, the door bursting open, a cloth over her face. Now she sat on a cold floor in a place that felt like dying. Marco D'Amato stood over her. He looked different than she remembered from that night at the club, older, more desperate, his eyes carrying the wildness of a man with nothing left to lose. He held a gun loosely in one hand, tapping it against his thigh like he was keeping time to music only he could hear. "He'll come for you," Marco said. "That's the beautiful part. He'll come, and when he does, I'll be waiting. Your life for his. Fair trade, I think." Francesca said nothing. There was nothing to say. She was currency now, leverage, a thing to be traded for something more valuable. She had heard Alessia's warning, and now she understood it fully. She could not have one without the other, and the other had found her at last. Time passed. She measured it in shadows through a broken window, in the distant sound of boats on the water, in Marco's pacing and muttering and checking his phone. He had partners, she gathered. Partners who were late. Partners who might not come at all. Should have sold you to the Russians when I had the chance, Marco muttered. But no. I wanted him to watch. I wanted him to know it was me. She closed her eyes. Thought of the library. The fire. The way Lucian's thumb had traced her cheekbone like she was something precious. She hoped he would not come. She hoped he would. The door exploded inward. Not slowly. Not carefully. It simply ceased to be a door, splintering off its hinges, and then men were everywhere, dark clothes, silent movements, spreading through the space like smoke. Marco raised his gun, but someone was already there, already taking it from him, already bending his arm behind his back until he screamed. Then Lucian stepped through the gap where the door used to be. He was not the man from the library. He was not the man who read Neruda or left roses on pillows. This was the other one, the one Alessia had warned about, and he moved through the room like death itself had decided to wear a very expensive suit. His eyes found Francesca. Held her. Measured the distance between them, the danger still present, the variables still unresolved. Marco struggled in the grip of Lucian's men. Spit blood. Laughed. Too late, he gasped. You think this ends clean? You think? Lucian walked past him. He knelt before Francesca, hands gentle on her face, checking her injuries with a tenderness that seemed impossible from the man who had just arrived through a broken door. His thumb traced her cheekbone again, and she felt something crack inside her chest. I'm sorry, he whispered. Only for her. Only ever for her. I knew you'd come, she whispered back. Always. He cut her bonds with a knife that appeared from nowhere. Lifted her to her feet. Kept one arm around her waist because her legs would not hold her, because she was shaking now, because the fear she had held back was finally breaking through. Behind them, Marco kept talking. Threats. Pleas. Promises. Bargains. Lucian ignored him. He guided Francesca toward the door, toward the men who parted to let them pass, toward the car waiting in the gray morning light. He was halfway through the door when Marco shouted one last thing. You touch her again and she's dead. You hear me? You think you won? She's marked now. Everyone will know. Everyone will. Lucian stopped. He did not turn around. His arm stayed around Francesca, steady and warm. But his voice carried back into the warehouse, quiet and absolute and final. You touched her. You took her from my house. You put your hands on what is mine. A pause. The warehouse held its breath. Touch her again and you are dead. Breathe her name and you are dead. Think of her face and you are dead. He walked out. Behind him, the sound of a single gunshot echoed off concrete walls. Francesca flinched. Lucian held her tighter. Don't look back, he said. Never look back. The car waited. The river flowed past. The city stirred awake, knowing nothing of what had happened in the dark. She looked at him, this man who read poetry and killed without hesitation, who left roses on pillows and men in rivers, who had just promised to unmake anyone who threatened her. I'm afraid, she said. Good. He opened the car door, helped her inside, settled beside her in the leather warmth. Fear keeps you alive. What keeps you alive? He looked at her for a long moment. The car began to move. The warehouse receded behind them, shrinking to nothing in the distance. You do, he said. If you want to continue this story with Francesca and Lucian, or if you'd like early access to future chapters and exclusive dark romance content, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. New chapters drop every week. Don't miss what happens next.